Thank you. So I have a couple of questions here that I'm just going to be asking you, and please feel free to answer them as best as you can, because our goal here at Sugar Bees Academy is to fill in the gaps, right? Connect parents with services, or just get an idea of how to better support their children in math, literacy, recognizing giftedness in the school system, and a variety of other different themes and topics. So, are you ready?
Let's go.
Oh, awesome. So, Autumn, I can call you Autumn, yes?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Can you tell our audience about yourself?
That is my least favorite question. My name is Autumn. Like Asima said, I am the executive director of the Brilliance, Excellence, and Equity Project, also the founder of an organization called A Black Child Can. I write a lot of things in a lot of places, but most of my work currently at the B Project centers around equity and gifted education. And A Black Child Can, it's equity and education more broadly, with an emphasis on children who look like mine, obviously. But there's actually the reason for that was because Black children in the United States are at the bottom of every statistical indicator. I think the same is true in Canada. And so with the idea that if we target strategies for the students that are at the bottom, who happen to be the students who look like the children that live in my house, everyone will benefit, right? That the trickle down thing we've learned doesn't really work, but the rising tide does indeed lift all ships. So that is me in a nutshell and kind of the work that I do.
Oh, that's awesome. Can you tell us, like, what is one publication that you've already put out? Because I do know you are a writer. Audience, she is definitely a writer. She definitely has some good books out there. Tell us about one of them.
So, actually, I feel like I want to talk about the one that I'm supposed to be working on. But so I have one of my books is called Let's Stop Calling It an Achievement Gap. And I named it that because the idea of an achievement gap, which again is like Black students are scoring lower than white students, Black students are less identified as gifted, they're taking fewer AP classes, allows people to put the onus on students, right? It allows people to say like, oh, those students can't, or those students won't, as opposed to really examining the ways that the systems that we have in place and the adults around students are responsible for these problems, right? Like if my child is not in AP classes because my child is in a school where you don't have any AP classes for her to take because you think that students in that school can't do AP, then is that my daughter's fault for not enrolling in AP classes? Or is that your institution's fault for, not even giving access to choice in those schools? And by the way, I think my daughter will not be taking any AP classes. I took a lot of AP classes in high school, but I think I am frustrated with the institution of the College Board right now and the response to the controversy over the African-American history course and just agreeing to completely whitewash it. So I actually think there's more benefit to students to do dual enrollment versus AP. AP, again, is one of those things like what you and I were talking about earlier, right? Like you pay for the class, you pay to take the test. If you score high enough, it's supposed to save you money in college. When I got to college, they took some of my AP credits and some of them you still got to take the class in college. So, it didn't save me the money the way they promised. But it is one of those things where money buys you the access to what is supposed to be a better product. And it is actually not better. Better is actually just signing your high schooler up to take some college classes at the local community college and transferring those in. That's a tip for the parents.
So you know what? Sorry to interrupt you there. But for those in the audience that don't know, what is AP?
Oh, I'm so sorry. See,
no worries.
We're assuming that everybody knows things that are common here. I'm based in the United States, so I apologize if I skim over things that I assume are common knowledge. AP is Advanced Placement Courses, and they're sponsored by the College Board, which is the same entity that sponsors the SAT, which is for years has been our standardized test for getting into college. There's a competitor test now that allows you to take individual subjects, the ACT, that's been popular for the last, 15 years or so. But prior to that, the SAT was like the thing that determined what college you can go to and if you could go to college and if you were smart enough for college and all those things, right?
Yeah.
The same entity has courses that are supposed to be advanced high school courses. They're supposed to be more rigorous. And again, you pay to take the test. It's a money thing. But again, for me, it's okay, so you say that you want more Black children to have access to, to take AP courses.
Yeah.
But you make no effort to have more Black reviewers and scorers. You make no effort to, when we finally do push and get an African American history course as an AP course, you let the state government in Florida, where you were going to pilot it, you into not, watering the course down. Like, they took out all of the critical content. Yeah. And so I think a lot of Black families and Black scholars in the United States are starting to say, like, you know what, my kids just won't come over there, and that's fine. Kind of unrelated, I had a conversation with a guy at Mensa who is a world, Mensa's a world organization of giftedness and genius. And he said the same. He calls me up one day. He says, Autumn Arnett, first of all, sir, I don't know you. Wherever you got my contact information from, like, it's public on the internet, that's fine. Yeah. Perhaps approach me a little differently. I did not invite you to approach me. That's one. But he says, Autumn Arnett, I read this article that you wrote about racism in gifted education. Is this true? It can't be true. I said, sir, why would I have published it if it weren't true?
Exactly. I'm talking from my experiences.
But I also interviewed experts and other parents, right? Like, this wasn't Autumn saying y'all are racist. Everybody I interviewed do the talking. Yeah. But I'm watching this man reconcile in real time, this, white man who's always had the access, who's a Mensa, and he says, well, we have a diversity problem in Mensa. We don't have any African Americans. And can you help me get more into our, and I said, first of all, it is not the burden of the marginalized to do your diversity work. So no, I can't. I can tell you what you should be thinking about and what questions you should be asking of your board. I said, but also, one of my favorite MLK quotes is around, towards the end of his life, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. feared that he was doing all this work to integrate his people into a burning house. Yes. Right? So you want me to help you increase your numbers, but is your culture one that is going to be supportive and inclusive and welcoming and affirming of Black people? Because what do we have to gain from joining this organization that's kept us out all this time? We've created our own institutions by now. Literally, right? Yeah. We have a Black Mensa and not need to come over here. And I say this, I think I told you this, but to your audience, I'm a graduate of historically Black college. My children, if they want my financial support, are going to historically Black colleges. Yes. Yep. I am a person who believes that, I grew up in an AME Zion church. I believe in building our own. And saying, like, if y'all don't want us, that's fine. I don't need to play over there. We can do this on our own. Just leave us alone. And so the man was like, wow, that really stuck out as powerful to me. Like, you're right. Like, what do you have to gain from joining our organization? I was like, yeah, so go work on that. Y'all go ask yourself, that's your assignment. Go figure that out. They want to integrate, but they're not willing to work on their culture, right? Well, and they don't even have a recognition that there's a culture problem. Because he was willing once I pointed it out, but there wasn't even a recognition that maybe their culture was. Competence and relevance are the bare minimum. A culture that is affirming of everyone that's there. Again, like you and I were talking about before we went live, it is the bare minimum to say you can come play in this space. That's right. The expectation needs to be you can come in this play in this space and feel at home. Yes, feel welcome. Feel like you're part of the family, right? Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. No, that was a long answer. Tell you about the book, but all over the place. Well, we'll get back to the book so you can talk about it a little bit more, because I know there's a wealth of knowledge in it. But I wanted to say, like, well said overall, because you know what? You're 110% correct. So another question that I have for you. Can you tell us about the services of the BEAST Project? Yeah, so the B Project, the Brilliance, Excellence, and Equity Project, we focus on really this culturally affirming training for teachers to help get more Black and brown students identified as gifted, right? All the research shows that when you have more teachers who look like us, more students who look like us get to be gifted. That is an indisputable research, not Autumn's name on it, right? Yeah. And so we're trying to get more Black and brown teachers, A, certified to teach gifted education, because the certifications determine who can be at the top of front of the classroom, right? Equity issues from a diversity standpoint, but B, because that ultimately gets us more kids. But a lot of the work that we're doing is, so we have like an open training model. We have the summer series coming up. It's virtual. Anybody can sign up. Anybody who's interested in creating a more equitable GT program or more equitable GT instruction that is more affirming of all children's experience. Again, because when you go sit for a lot of these standardized tests, they don't reflect the experiences, the lived experiences of the students that you're saying you want to identify. And in some states in the United States, not only do they not reflect, so not only do I not see myself, what you're saying completely contradicts what I know to be true. When you're calling slavery a choice, when you're equating it to like volunteer servitude, like, right? When you're I did a field trip with my daughter's class years ago to Thomas Jefferson's mansion, and you're trying to tell me how well you treated your slaves. Sir, you had hundreds of people enslaved here, and you want me to believe that you were a good person? Like, cut it out. But even though students don't have the language to articulate that, Black students still feel that level of cognitive dissonance between what they know to be true and what you're trying to sell them on. And if your assessments and your curriculum are so whitewashed that they are not only not showing the students' experiences, but negating what they know to be true. Again, for Indigenous students, you're saying there was a willful migration. No, you guys killed millions of people for their land.
Displaced them, put them on reserves.
Put them on reservations. You took a community that, and again, in Canada too, right? It's the same.
110%. Yeah.
You took a community that is communal by nature. So they were going to welcome you in and give you tools and show you how to get food and try to help because they value community. Even if you're not a part of their community, they want you to be great. And you took everything you could from them knowledge-wise and then massacred them. So now you have Indigenous students sitting in your classrooms and you're trying to figure out why they're not being identified as gifted because your whole curriculum is anti that, you can't even get them to score well on the regular history test because everything you're saying goes against everything they know to be true. So we're taking just reconciling those things, right? Like getting people to understand how giftedness looks different in different populations. Again, in communities of color, community is a value. So you're not going to often see the hyper independence that you're going to see from white gifted kids. That's just not our value. We value collaboration. Getting them to understand that. And then we have a fellowship model in the fall that is only for Black and Brown teachers. So only Black and Brown teachers allowed. They're paid, they're supported through the process of getting their gifted certification. But a lot of that work is unlearning in a space that is for us, the things that we would have been taught in the same schools, right? So again, I've had several conversations with a lot of Black male educators in the States, and you talk to them and first of all, Black male educators make up like 2% of our teacher population.
Oh, well, yeah, I can see that down here too.
So that this is already not an attractive field for Black male educators, right? Like Black men are like, everybody coming to do this for $40,000 a year, get all this. And that the ones who come because they really care and they really want to make a difference in the community. Right. But I've had so many conversations with several who are like, it's like, did you know that you, Mr. Assistant Superintendent, Black man with a Black man superintendent, did you know that your district refers more Black male children to the court system than any other district in the area? And they're like, how do you know that? And I'm like, because I look at data all day. What do you mean? But just because there's an assumption that because somebody is Black and brown, and even knowing that they care, means that they know how to do it right. A lot of Black male educators will come in and they'll be like, well, I have to give them tough love because the world is tough. No, you don't. You just have to give them love. With love, they will be empowered to navigate whatever the toughness of the world is. But again, if you come in believing what you were taught in these racist schools of education about students who look like you, then you're going to do more harm than good because they thought that you were going to be a safe space and you ended up being just what they doing in blackface. So we do a lot in our fellowship. We do a lot of unpacking our own experiences, unpacking our own ways that we've learned to see the world. I mean, one example, you can cut in whenever. I know I'm rambling.
Oh, I'm really like, I love what you're saying. I'm just like really like in what you're talking about. Please continue.
Of an epiphany that I had even myself, like while teaching the course last week. we were talking about language as an asset, and I brought in someone who is a researcher on Haitian Creole, a researcher on Spanish, and someone who's a researcher on what we call AAVE, African American Vernacular English, or Ebonics or slang or whatever. And I had a moment in the class of recognizing, again, intellectually, my research will tell you that we should value AAVE as a language, right? We should value the cultural experiences that all students bring to the classroom. In my household, though, what I realized through teaching the class and the discussions was that my grandmother, one of my grandmothers was an English teacher. One of my great grandmothers was an English teacher, and my other grandmother dropped out of school in 8th grade to have my mother. But that grandmother is the one who helped raise me, and she placed such a premium on speaking proper English that when I had my own children, who I shared with you are 15 and 13 now, when my own children would come home speaking, I grew up calling it Ebonics. AAVE is the research term. Ebony phonics, Ebonics. When my own children would come home speaking Ebonics, I'd say, we don't speak like that in this house. This is, stop splitting your verbs, conjugate appropriately, speak it, you need a predicate and a subject, right? Like,
did you get in trouble for ain't? It ain't this. I used to get in trouble for that.
No, ain't. And it's always my daughter. My daughter is the challenger in the house. But I realized that, I spent their lives correcting them on that. But I valued them learning French and Spanish. And so even again, the politics of language and what we value, like what makes French and Spanish any more legitimate than Ebonics. And now there's a study, it's actually my favorite study in all of study history, that says that Black English understands nuance better than traditional. Like they use the phrase, there was a study where they asked a bunch of kids, there's a picture of Cookie Monster and a picture of Elmo and whatever, the Sesame Street characters. And there's like, who eats cookies? And all the white kids pick Cookie Monster. Or maybe it was like, I'm getting this wrong, but maybe let's say like Elmo was eating cookies. And Cookie Monster was not in this picture. I'm just going to do this for example. And it was like, who eats cookies? And, all the white children said Elmo. And some said Cookie Monster, because sometimes Cookie Monster eats cookies, but in this picture, it's Elmo. And then they were like, who be eating cookies? And the white kids couldn't answer that, but all the Black kids were like, oh yeah, Cookie Monster be eating Cookie
Monster. Exactly.
And the study concludes that like there's a lot of nuance in Black American English where Black children understood in ways that the white children didn't, that even though Cookie Monster was not eating cookies in this picture, habitually, by practice, Cookie Monster be eating cookies. He eats cookies all the time. That is his regular state of existence.
Exactly.
And so, but realizing that like in my own, and my daughter's like, Mommy, I have an A in English right now. She's like, that I know how to speak. I know how to write your proper English. You know that I know it. So why are you harassing me about overhearing me say what I ain't gonna do on the phone with my friends right now? And I really appreciate her for that, because I appreciate her. Again, this is a realization that I had in real time on the class. I realized that I bought into the white supremacy complex that said these European languages are the value. Because even though Spanish we think of as a brown language, it was because of the colonial history of Latin America. Portuguese and right. It was not, that's not their native, the native language in any of these Latin American countries is not Spanish. It's a mix of indigenous languages. And so having my daughter be able to call that out has loosened my ability to use slang, like even say Cookie Monster be eating cookie right on this call. And has allowed me to be more of my full self. But it has also made me realize that even as Black people who are well-intended, who intellectually know what is right, we still, if we were raised in these systems of white supremacy, we still don't always get it right. So our fellowship focuses on like recognizing that in ourselves, committing to getting it right for our students, and valuing the ways that they show up as their full selves.
And you want to know something too, to talk on that language aspect, because I do speak Spanish and I speak French, and the English language isn't the greatest. Right? It takes and draws from so many different cultures around the world to create this thing that we call English that's always changing, right? And that, for example, Mandarin speakers, right? Asian speakers, if they speak Mandarin, they struggle. They say that English is harder to learn than Chinese because some words can sound the same but completely mean different things, or one way of saying one word can completely change, and then you don't even know, and then you're using it, and people are like, oh, we haven't used that in a long time. It's like, oh, well, it doesn't make me any lesser than, right? It just means that you guys just happen to stop, and like all of a sudden new words are replacing old words, but they don't tell you. So yeah.
There was a really fun Twitter thread not too long ago that asked non-native English speakers to tell us a word in their culture that does not directly translate into English.
Oh.
And it was so beautiful. Like when you look at the complexities of other languages and you look at how people just use language so beautifully in other linguistic cultures. I mean, I have some favorites from Spanish too, like in Costa Rica where we lived for a year. Instead of de nada, I mean, again, it's regional, right? Instead of de nada for like, it's nothing or you're welcome.
Yeah.
Con mucho gusto.
Yeah.
Like,
con mucho gusto.
Much pleasure. That's so sweet and eloquent. Which, like, yeah, no worries. You got it.
Yeah.
Like,
or like encantada. Encantada. The pleasure is my encantada. Like,
yes. Like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Thank you. I'm thanking you again for the way that you responded to the, I mean,
right.
But again, like we were talking about earlier, we get caught up in this idea of America as the penultimate, right? Like I think even in Canada, people believe that America is this great country. Although I think since 2016 and the election of Donald Trump, every time I leave the country, we're kind of the laughing stock still. They're like, haha, y'all elected that idiot, huh? How's that going? You guys have devalued my passport. Thank you. Thank you.
Or should I say, when you travel abroad, right? I've had friends who literally wear the Canadian flag on their backpacks and on their clothing and stuff like that. Yeah, I hate to say it's not the greatest, but it's not the greatest. But and the people who do move out and they see the rest of the world and what the rest of the world has to offer, it's literally a culture shock.
Well, we look at y'all as being, I think we, like people of color and liberal Americans, look at y'all as being like the version of us that has figured it out better, right? Because again, realizing that we've had like similar colonial histories, similar influences, similar belief systems come over, y'all are the ones who have at least figured out how to take care of your people better while we take care of money, right? Like,
yeah,
and don't take care of money well, but like the things that we value are business and money and millionaires. And so like people of color and liberals in America are like when they think about leaving the country, they're like, we're all going to Canada. And I'm like, all right. I mean, Canada, yes, it is better than the United States. Similar colonial history. Like I was saying earlier, when I talked to other Black folks in Canada, they're still like, maybe don't come here.
Yeah. We're going a bit backwards ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you watch how all of world history is tied, right? Like one of my favorite things is I grew up Christian, but I grew up AME Zion with a pastor who had a PhD. So it was a very intellectual sermon all the time.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things in adulthood is visiting regions that you saw in the Bible and realizing they're not all in the Middle East, right? Like Gibraltar is in Spain.
Is it?
It is. It's at the bottom of Spain. And so like realizing how world history all ties together, and it validates for me because it's like, yep, all of these places and you see these people and like we don't all believe the same way and the same thing, but like these things happened. But realizing how like once we saw Brexit in England, we knew it was only going to be a matter of time before North America showed its ass. North America shy of Mexico, because Mexico again is looked at as like the brown, undeserving.
Yeah, I heard references like that before. Yeah, which is totally not true, but
well, no, but again, it's just like our colonial history.
Yeah,
Canada and the United States were colonized similarly.
Yep.
And Mexico resisted that colonization for them. I mean, there was still
for the longest time. For the longest time. In South America, if they could have, gotten a stronger foothold, they probably would have colonized the entire thing. But you're right. And I think like, and I could totally be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong though, but like, wasn't Florida at one point part of Mexico?
Texas was part of Mexico.
Part of that area?
Florida was colonized by the Spanish. Texas was part of Mexico. But the Spanish and the Portuguese seem to have gone in not to leave their countries, but to like claim land and resources. The Spanish and the Portuguese seem to have, like, the way that they colonized things is they went in and killed a bunch of people to establish power and dominance.
Yeah.
But they didn't seem to move there in mass the way that the English
yeah, you're right.
did. The English and to some extent the French. I mean, like I think that the English were just unhappy in their country and they were seeking places to go.
Yeah.
I don't think that was as true for the Spanish and the Portuguese. I think they were cool with their country. They just needed more stuff, more land to conquer.
Yeah.
And so while you did have the histories of slavery in Brazil and you did have those other things, they were more like going in to set up shop to get you to pump out the resources for them.
And then take it back home.
And take it back home.
Yeah.
Versus like the British and the French who came over here stayed and like took over.
Yeah. They took over, fed in their settlers, their expats, or not expats. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, and that's another thing, right? So we expatriated to Costa Rica for a year and a half and ultimately decided to come back here, even though I'm actively planning my re-exit. But even when you look at the ways that people, so we lived in a place that had a lot of expats because I needed access to get international schools. When you look at the ways that different people from different places come over and experience the culture, right? Like some people are coming over and they want to experience the culture and learn the culture and become
part of the community
with the people.
Yeah.
And maintaining this respect for the fact that this is your space and not my space. And thank you for welcoming me here.
Yeah.
And some people came over and were like, y'all don't have a McDonald's here, so I'm going to build one. You don't have this. We need this. This is a place that only speaks English and it's for English speakers, right? Like some people came over and were like, I want to build the world that I want in the place that I want to live.
Yeah.
And they drive the prices of everything up.
Yeah.
Because you know that, you know, you will pay for what you want.
Yeah.
And it hurts the locals because they can't afford to pay what you've now driven the price up to, but it doesn't matter to you because it means that more of your folks can come over if less, you know, more of them are leaving.
Yeah.
And so it was just a really interesting way to see how different people experience a different culture differently.
Yeah.
When I travel places and I tell people I'm American, because usually people make me from whatever country I'm in, especially if I wear my hair. You know, oh, you from here? I'm like,
yeah.
When I travel and people find out I'm American, they're like, you don't seem like an American. And I'm like, that's because you haven't had a lot of Americans of color. Like you're equating American to white, which makes sense, right? That's how we project the image. But the way that communities of color, like we were just talking about with giftedness, interact with the world and other cultures is different than white Americans and even white Western Europeans.
Yeah, I hear you. I could even say too, it's like they get a lot of, you know, the visuals of what you know, like America portrays when it comes to Black and brown individuals. And so when you have the intellectuals or just general people going out and traveling, right, their perspective or their perception is completely like, oh, I thought you all acted this way. You guys don't act like that at all. I do hope you all are enjoying the show. This has been such an insightful conversation today. And yeah, please stay to the very end because I will get I'll definitely have Autumn like share a little bit more about the Beast Project, especially about how you could possibly get her book or where to find it. So let's see where we go. All right, so question for you. How long have you been a part of the Beast Project? Let's be real, you are extremely intellectual, right? You're very passionate about what you're doing. What made you get involved with this particular project?
So the Beast Project is 1 year old. So I've been here for 1 year. We just celebrated our birthday. Yay!
Yay! Congratulations.
And I actually was not looking for a full-time like executive director role because I run this other organization and I really want to like scale back my work life and do more. You know, my kids are in high school, so I want to enjoy the last couple of years we have and then be out of here. But I saw this post on LinkedIn for this inaugural executive director and I was like, That's really important work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I closed the thing. I was like, for someone else to do. Really important work for someone else to do. And then I saw it again. And the fourth time it popped up in my feed, I was like, all right, Lord, fine. Like, I will submit an application.
Yeah, someone's tapping you on the shoulder, like, hey, hello.
I mean, you know, I am a writer. I think I write good cover letters that intrigue people. I did not write I was like, I think this is really important work that you guys are doing, but I think, you know, ABC, boom, 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 and I don't really want to do all of that. But it showed up in my feed 4 times, so here I am writing a letter. Like, it was a very autumn cover letter that was not like, I want you to hire me. It was like, you keep showing up, so here I am. But and then, you know, long story short, here I am. But the main point remains that it is really important work. It is work that is personal to me. I have 2 gifted children who are identified in Maryland. When we moved to Texas a couple of years ago, we're from Washington, D.C. It's a majority Black city, regardless of what you see on TV. It has been Chocolate City my entire life. And when we got to Texas, Austin, Texas, it was overwhelmingly white. And it's one thing to read on paper that the population is 7%. You're like, well, I can find the 7, you know. And then you get there and you're like, this 7 is very different than the 97 I knew. You're like, you're not the same kind of Black people. And what I tell people is that when you grow up in a city where everybody is like your cousin, you just view the world very differently than you do when you grew up not seeing a lot of people who look like you and having to just navigate that differently. So it's not a knock on the people of Austin. It was just that we navigated the world very differently. Again, I grew up in a Black city. I grew up in a Black church. I went to a Black college for undergrad, like Black. And then I got here and I was like, what's this?
Gotta shift.
And it was the first time that I ever had to fight the fight for my children, right? So again, I've been doing this education equity stuff for over a decade, but never where my children went to school. Like, we were always good. And then I got there, you know, I closed on my house August 6th of that year. School was starting on like the 15th. So I had to rush to register for classes. And I'm like, well, my kids are gifted here. You know, here's all their stuff from Maryland, put them in. And they're like, well, we can't, they have to be tested in Texas. And I was like, last time I checked, Maryland has a better system of education than Texas, but whatever. Okay, fine. Tell me where to get tested. Cool. And I could not even get them to tell me information about where and how to get my children to, like, you said, this is the step we have to take. I said, okay, cool, even though it's ridiculous. But then you wouldn't even tell me how to take the step, right? Like, you wouldn't, like, I'm asking you a direct question. Where do we go and when do we schedule it? And you will not answer. And so that was the first time that I had to fight for my own children. And, you know, it ended up being like, they still never answered me. And I ended up being like, well, put them in gifted by default. And when you figure out the answer to the question, then we'll get them tested. But let's start them where their transfer records say they should be. And then we get to, you know, we left Texas, went to Costa Rica, left Costa Rica. My children were like, can we go back to Atlanta? So we're in Atlanta now. My son was born in Atlanta. Again, I did undergrad here. When I got married, started my family. We moved back here for a few years. And so we get here, and my son was first in a school where they just didn't have the infrastructure to serve gifted students. So they didn't test them because they couldn't serve them.
Because they had no one to do the test, or they didn't have the resources or the staff to be able to do it.
Well, once you identify a student as gifted, you're obligated to provide gifted services. If you don't have the ability to provide gifted services, which again, like the B Project believes that it doesn't have to be a pull-out teacher. We believe that if you are a second grade teacher, you should know how to differentiate for gifted students in your classroom.
Fair enough.
And it shouldn't be harder, right? Like, so we're not asking you to hire additional staff. We're just asking you to get the training so that all of your staff can serve all of your students.
It's like differentiated training, right? Or teaching.
Differentiated instruction.
Exactly.
And there's usually this idea that like gifted students will be fine. You don't have to do anything for them. They're going to be okay. You know, the smartest kids are going to figure it out. Which is absolutely not true. Giftedness is an exceptionality. And if we recognize that children that we think have the deficiency, you know, like need extra help, why would we think that these students on the other side of the spectrum don't need extra help?
Exactly.
They do. And when you don't, I mean, there's a direct research correlation between giftedness and anxiety and addictive behavior.
Oh.
If they're not, because gifted students and students with ADHD, the indicators are very similar,
Mm-hmm.
have a brain deficiency of dopamine. That's the happy drug. And the thing that, like research, again, not Autumn research, like
yeah. This is research, everybody. It's out there, right?
They have lower levels of dopamine.
That's so crazy.
And the thing for gifted students that often helps hit that higher level of dopamine and that like self-actualization, like ding on Maslow's hierarchy, is the challenge, is the intellectual challenge. And so again, like a lot of people who are gifted are also really bad procrastinators for some reason. That coming up to the last 5 minutes before things are like, that provides the challenge that we need in our everyday lives to like be okay. But if you don't get the dopamine you need, then people often seek it out through drugs or risky behavior or whatever, you know, whatever your addictive personality trait shows up in. And so the consequences of not getting it right for gifted kids are actually really high, even though we tend to think like, oh, those kids will be fine. They're not fine. They need services.
That is crazy. That's amazing. Like, I'm like, this is such enriching information, like honestly, because I can see it. And I can also see it, how it can tie into like the mental health of a student. You know what I mean? In the classroom, behaviors. Because I don't want to say we, because in my school system, right, gifted kids have like a particular program where we actually have a different teacher to come and support those kids.
A lot of them.
Right? But, you know, let's say we have a child in the classroom who might be gifted. We wouldn't know. And then we'd be taking their, you know, their actions or their behaviors or, you know, the quality of work. And we'd be like, oh, there's something wrong with this child. Maybe it's just an LD. Right? Like, I feel embarrassed to say this, but I probably have had children in my classroom that are gifted, but never tested them.
Of course.
So I would never know. Right? And I feel sad.
And don't be embarrassed.
Right? I feel sad about it. I feel like I could do so much more now knowing that.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about my kids having very different personalities, right? So my daughter, who was the oldest, I started working my children on kindergarten work when they were like 1.5 and 2 years old. So both of my kids could read before they were 3.
Yeah.
So when my daughter gets to kindergarten and they're telling her to color the bear brown, Jordan's personality is not coloring your stupid bear. You have insulted her intelligence.
Yep.
And again, a 5-year-old doesn't have the language to say this, but she's never going to, you're not going to get anything from her for the rest of the year. And she's going to be a behavior problem. So I'm getting calls all year where they're like, Jordan's unraveling my carpet at story time. And I'm like, Jordan could read that story to the class.
Yeah.
Let her read it. And, you know, and lead the discussion. Of course, you can't do that. And they're like, Jordan dumped out the soap at the sink today. And I'm like, please stop calling me for these ridiculous. And, you know, this is another thing that we do for Black children. Like, if she's not hitting anyone or harming anyone, like, yes, she is going to unravel your carpet. I told you that because she's not going to color the bear brown. She wants to work on the 2nd grade work that I sent in her backpack for her to do with her.
Yeah. She wants to be challenged.
So just tell Jordan she can go do page 8 in her workbook. You know, she has a sticky note that I wrote this morning that told her what she's to do after school. Let her do that during your class time, and then you won't have any problems out of her for the rest of the year. And the teacher's like, all the students in the class need to be working on the same thing. I said, okay, well, don't call my phone again about her dumping out soap or unraveling carpet, because she's going to. She's going to all year because she's not being challenged. She's going to be a behavior problem. I mean, another, you know, she was in 5th grade one year. She's going into 10th, so this was 5 years. She was in 5th grade, and her teacher calls me one day, and he says, Autumn. And I say, yes. He was another who called me every day. He said, I need to tell you what happened today. I said, okay. He said, we had a lesson, a science lesson that I was trying to teach. And he said, as a baseline, I asked the children, I said, we can all agree that there's only one sky, right? All the children say yes. He said, I looked over at Jordan and she was like, and so I said, all right, Jordan, do you agree that there's only one sky? And Jordan said, I think there could be 2 skies. And the teacher was like, tell me more. And Jordan said, there's a night sky and a day sky. The earth turns and you're seeing a different sky. The teacher said, he was like, I needed this as a baseline. He said, and now I'm like, all right, how many people agree with Jordan? And you see half the kids' hands go up, and now I got to go back. And he said, and I know in my soul, that his daughter does not believe there are 2 skies. I said, yeah, she doesn't. She understands that while you're seeing a different part of the sky, you know, she told me about this when she came home. She told me she thought she was funny. He said, but your daughter convinced more than half of my students the foolishness she didn't even believe. And I didn't even get to teach my science lesson today. I said, she was bored. I'm sorry.
Oh
Right. Like,
God.
and Jordan does that. She constantly is the child who, again, another year she had to do a presentation on Josephine Baker.
Yeah.
It was, well, no, she got to choose her person. She chose Josephine Baker. The project was boring to her. The questions were not challenging. So didn't do it until the night before, which meant she hadn't done the readings that she was supposed to do leading up, right? So, you know, you're supposed to be able to, the class was supposed to be able to interact with the historical figure and ask questions, and you're supposed to be able to answer them because you would have done your reading. So somebody, and the teacher asked me to come for the presentation day. So I'm sitting in the back of the classroom while I observed this one myself. And, you know, she had gone through Josephine Baker was a spy. She moved to France. She da-da-da-da-da. So somebody asked her a question that she should have known if she had done the reading, but nobody else would have known because Josephine Baker wasn't their person. Yeah. And my child said, she looked up and she said, next question. And her teacher said, Jordan, you have to answer you have to answer your classmate's question. And she said, that's top secret. I told you I was a spy. He's going to get me killed. Like, my other child is a pleaser. He wants you to be happy with him. Yeah. The one who is going to color the best damn brown bear you've ever seen in your life. I remember when he was in kindergarten, you know, they were supposed to write their names at the top of the page. Yeah. Alexander's already young because he has a late birthday. So he's already young in the class. But again, my children have been reading since before they were 3. So he, you know, he goes up there and he writes in a sloppy kindergarten attempted cursive, Alexander Preston Jones. First, middle, and last. The whole thing. Jordan just wouldn't have read JJ's, which you were going to get from her. Alex, and so the teacher writes, we're just practicing first names today at the top of the paper. And when I got it back, I said, the boy can write his whole name. Why would you push back on that? Right. But like if the kindergarten teacher had access to the tools that said, we're not testing for gifted in kindergarten, but if students need a challenge, let them write their full name. Literally. Yeah. If students, you know, Alexander Preston Jones knew how to spell his full name. I know you're still working with Jessica Johnson on how to spell her name. Yeah. But if Alexander knows all his letters, let him write them. If he needs an additional level of challenge, tell him to try it in cursive. Yeah. Right. Like try to you know, box it in so they're the same level of everybody else. No, give them opportunity to be able to express themselves in different ways, right? Because they're going to be at a different level, right? And these teachers never really knew how to do that. And so again, Alexander is not the child who's going to give you all the antics that Jordan continues to give her in 10th grade. Yeah. He's the child who really wants you to be proud of him and happy and pleased with what he created. But if all teachers have the tools to just say, like for Alexander, give them those 3 levels and give the levels to all of the students. Say, if you're good at this, then try this. Yeah. Try this and see who wants to try the next thing. Not all of them will. Same in math. Not all of them are, you know, do all the even problems. And these students should do 22 and 23 as well. Exactly. If they need to go above and beyond, let them go above and beyond. Recognize it. You know what I mean? Communicate to the parents and document it in their reports. Because give that access to all of the students, whether we think they're gifted or not. Because if the student who you thought wasn't gifted wants to attempt problem 23, let them. And they get it right. And now you need to go back and say, maybe this child is. But if you only give it to the kids in the gifted pull-out classroom, because these are the kids you think are capable of doing problem 23. Yeah. Right. Like, so a lot of our work is, again, obviously we want more gifted educators of color certified, but we also know that we're missing kids in our regular classroom. So how can we scaffold the same curriculum we're using without creating more work for teachers who are already overworked? Yeah. To build in these levels of challenge for students so that they're getting their social and emotional needs met for that dopamine check. And to give us additional tools to say, you know what? I hadn't thought of Johnny as gifted before. Johnny comes in every day and falls asleep in my class because he's taking care of his baby sister last night. Yeah. But Johnny is doing it. Maybe we do need to refer Johnny, right? Like, getting that level of access to all of the students is super important. And that's a lot of the work that we're doing. Yeah. Oh gosh, I love it. I love it. Important work. Okay. Yeah.
It's so important. I see where I can improve as an educator and even like as administrator in the future, because we don't learn that.
Right.
Like, unless you are in that specific job, you don't know. You don't know the signs. You don't know, the challenges that children experience, right? You don't know any of that. And that we are doing, okay, we're doing such a disservice of not being aware of that. We want to be able to meet all the needs of our students, right? But even though we know we have differentiated instruction, a lot of the things is just a big, broad brush, just brush.
It is.
Right? Oh my gosh. So yeah, this is.
I feel like a chatty Cathy. All my answers are so long-winded. I'm trying to make it like conversational and useful.
No, this is perfect. This is perfect. And I love how you draw a lot on your personal experiences, right? Because like for those individuals that need to have like a picture of what does that look like, right? You're providing that, and I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your story, because it makes me feel like I'm there, I'm seeing what's happening and making those deeper connections. All right. So I got, what is it? I got 2 more questions. You ready?
Let's do them.
All right. So, okay. Where's this one? Okay. We right. Answer that. Truth be told, we did answer quite a bit.
I tried to tie them together a little bit of my narratives.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I'm like, oh, we already answered that question. Great quotes about the services. What motivated you? What you provide parents. Okay, so let me try this one. Okay. So at the Bees Project, has there ever been a question you've never been asked, right? By, let's say, a parent that you may have met or somebody that you worked with? So the question is, at your business, is there a question that you've never been asked by a parent that you think is important to consider when it comes to getting support? And I do know that you work with educators, so let's turn it towards the educator focus, right?
We can do the parents, because I think that there is a tendency to see parents, especially parents of color, especially parents who may come from lower income homes, parents who have less education, or parents who just simply don't have the time to be as engaged as we think they should be.
Yeah.
Which really just means like the FaceTime and the responding to emails and every call from the teachers, which I'm very educated. I do this work, right? And I ignore my child's
phone call, teacher phone calls, parent teacher interviews.
Because again, I've had 15 years now of teachers calling me about problems that are not problems.
Yeah.
Of me offering a solution as A, the first expert on my child's learning.
Yeah.
And B, an actual expert on the way that children, and particularly Black and brown children, learn.
Yeah.
That you're not listening to. Like when I give you solutions, you're not implementing them. So don't call me anymore. Figure it out. Like if you want to do the rest on your own, figure it out.
Give you the answers. Use them because it's going to help you.
Well, but I say this as like a parent who, on paper, should be your model parent. Yeah. But I'm so annoyed with like the way that we have done schooling as an institution that I check out. Like, so if I check out, then imagine people who don't have the tools. Imagine people who don't have the time, right? I work from home. I can stomp up there all day, any day.
Yeah.
But imagine people who like have to be in an office. Imagine people who have to work 2 jobs to support their families, right? Like
that's right. Yeah.
There's a tendency to say that those parents don't care, or to see those parents as less valuable, and we trickle down and value those children less too. So my thing for parents is to A, trust yourself as the first expert on your child's learning. Even if you are not an educational expert, you've never even read an article on, the ways that students learn best, your child, and dig into that. And really, again, we've gone off and on with homeschooling. One of my children really loves homeschooling. One of them really doesn't. Not imposing what I think is, and when we were doing homeschooling out of necessity during the pandemic, one of them wants his schedule written out on Sunday both of them on their schedule written out on Sunday. But Alexander wants a schedule. He wants to know, I got to get up at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
At 8:30, I need to be working on this. At 10:15, I need to work on this.
Yeah.
And at 10 o'clock, I can do this. And if I finish early in between, then I get a little free time for myself. But he wants that rigidity.
You need to see that.
Jordan's like, Mommy, give me everything on Sunday.
Yeah.
You said it's due Friday morning, right?
Yep.
Okay, don't bother me about how I'm structuring my day. She's like, I might not feel like rolling out of bed until 1 p.m. and I might be working on it, you know, after you've gone upstairs for the night.
Yep.
But you said it's due by Friday morning. So leave me alone unless you don't get it on Friday morning. And I had to be like, this is annoying because I don't want you laying in bed all day.
Yeah.
You know, I want you to be productive, but like,
Yeah.
why? Right. And so again, understanding that your children know how they learn, and your children, even if they don't have the language to say what they need, they know what they need. So trusting your children, but then again, trusting yourself even more than the experts, because the experts don't always, I mean, I don't want to say they don't always have your child's best interest at heart, because I believe that they do. I believe that all educators got into this because they care about kids inherently. But if they don't know the ways that they're causing harm, right? And then the other thing is recognize that even as parents, we can cause harm. So make sure that you apologize. Make sure that you call out vocally. You know, I had to have a conversation with my son recently. My son is 13. And again, he's the pleaser. He's the child that doesn't want to rock the boat. The other one's the challenger. Yeah. But I had to have a conversation with him where I said, Alexander, I need you to do a better job of, you know, this summer, I want you to work on learning how to communicate your feelings. And I need you to work on holding people accountable for treating you the way that you want to be treated. That starts with being able to communicate how you want to be treated. And that includes mommy. You have to be able to say, Mommy, when you took this tone with me, I felt this way. Right? And I may not always, you know, you're 13. So I may not always be like, sometimes that tone was necessary because I asked you 13 damn times. Yeah. Which I'm sorry. I asked you all these times to wash the dishes, and you still, you know, and so we can have that dialogue. Yeah. That is not how I grew up. I grew up in a very children are seen and not heard household. I grew up in a very like, because I said so household. Yeah. So learning that to trust your children as agents in their own learning and their own development is new for me too. Yeah. But if you want them to have the tools as adults, you know, again, Jordan, the challenger, is actually the one who pushed me on that. She said, Mommy, you know, Alexander, we have dinner together every night. We're sitting at the dinner table. And he had said something to me that wasn't disrespectful, but felt like it shouldn't have come out of his mouth. Yeah. And I don't even remember what it was, but I said, who are you talking to? I am your mother. We are not friends. Yeah. Right? Common response in our house. Who are you talking to? And, you know, he said, he just kind of bowed his head and he didn't say anything, and he came back a couple minutes later with something else about something else. Yeah. And as we were clearing the table, Jordan said, Mommy. I said, yes. She said, you said that you want Alexander to be able to stand up for himself and go back and forth with people. How is he supposed to learn that if he can't practice it at home where he's supposed to be safe?
Ooh, and I was like, your girl's dropping gems there.
Right? I was like, yes, but also maybe time and place. And she was like, it wasn't disrespectful, Mommy. And I was like, you're right, it wasn't disrespectful. So like even recognizing like my own as a parent wanting to maintain that power dynamic that is, I am your mother, I am here and you are here. She was like, he didn't disrespect you. He didn't, you know, I understand that you didn't like what he said. Yeah, yeah. There was nothing wrong with it. And I was like, she was like, and he needs to have the safety to practice that life skill in our house. And I was like, you're right. So again, giving your children and acknowledging when they're right and you're wrong, and apologizing and working through your own trauma, your own upbringing.
Yeah, I agree with you so much, because that's something that I know myself I've been working on with my nieces, my nephews, because very much so, like same thing, children are seen and not heard, but we want them to advocate. We want them to feel comfortable expressing themselves. Right. So when they come asking you things, we're like, you know, like go away. But at the same time, it's like, well, are we showing them? Are we giving them that positive environment to explore? Like we should be talking to them. We should be communicating with them, right? And having that dialogue, because that's what we want them to do, right? So it's cool.
I will say time and place is still important. Time and place is still important, right? So for us, there is a time to push back.
Yeah.
And there's a time to try these things, and there's a time not to.
Yeah.
Right. So especially if you have younger children, again, mine are teenagers.
Yeah.
And so we've been in the trenches for years. But especially if you have younger children, I do not believe in giving. I mean, you know, people will say all the time, like, what Alexander and Jordan think about blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Alexander and Jordan are children. They were not given a choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, they don't get to decide if we move into Costa Rica. I do not believe in letting children run your household.
Oh, 110%. Yeah.
Sure.
No.
But there are areas where even like your 2-year-old niece, there are areas where you can give her some agency.
Yes.
And as she gets older, so again, for instance, when my children were that age, I don't cook special meals. You're eating what I cook for dinner, or but you can choose that you like rice more than you like peas,
and ask for it. Yeah.
And if you eat more rice, you know, if you ask for more rice, that's fine. And if you decide, what I always did try to do was put like something that I know they would eat. So again, Jordy, even as a big 15-year-old, she likes like 3 vegetables. And the others she'll eat, but she, if left to make her own plate, they're not going on the plate.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, which is weird because as a little child, she ate all the veggies, but whatever. She's regressing in teenagerdom. But if I know that you like, maybe I'll make green beans and broccoli for myself because I'm trying to eat fewer carbs.
Yep.
And you can choose at 2, you can choose, do you want the green beans or the broccoli?
Yep.
Right. So there are age appropriate things that you can do to allow your children to practice that agency. There are contexts there, like you can have like, you guys are playing a game together, or you're reading a book together when you ask them what they think. Yeah. No, you can't just offer your unsolicited opinion on what mommy said you had to wear to school today, because you're not going out here in a ladybug rain boot and an Elmo hat and in summertime, like, and a sneaker on the other foot, right? Discussion.
Oh yeah.
There are places where you can have discussion. For us, at the table, everything is on the table. All this, I mean, that's the house I grew up into. My dad, we talked about everything at the dinner table.
Yeah.
But in the morning, when we're trying to get out of here, that's not the time for negotiation.
Yep.
So
time, place, location is always important, especially context as well.
Yeah. You're not how that works for your family, but recognizing when you're not bending because you're feeling a need to maintain that power dynamic versus when you're not bending because this is actually like a parenting.
Yeah. This is a parenting moment, right?
Right.
Yeah. I totally understand. Totally understand. All right. You ready for the last question? All right. How can people reach you if they want to get more involved, if they want to participate in the course that the Beef Project has to offer, and find your book?
So the book is available on Amazon. I also have like a coloring book journal for educators on Amazon too. The Bee Project is at BEE Project US on all social. You can find me personally at _2 Arnett, ARNETT, on everything. I'm trying to think. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn is the same, Twitter is the same, and my website is the same. So if you go to a2arnett.com, it'll give you my email and all that good stuff. Yeah, I think that's it.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'll make sure to put that information in the comment section below, and I'll double check that with you so that I have all the links and everything correct. But other than that, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Did you enjoy this as much as I did?
I had a really good time. I'm sitting here like, how do we get to 11:26? But
thank you everyone for joining us today for the What's the Buzz, the Sugar Bees Academy podcast. And I look forward to the next video that we'll be having in the near future. So stay tuned. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, tag someone, or share this with someone that you think needs to hear this most. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next time or in the next video. Till then, take care, everyone. Bye.